back for our UFC 325 Volkanovski versus Lopes 2 predictions from Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. It is the rematch for the featherweight championship against Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski will defend the championship once more against Diego Lopes after Diego Lopes beat John Silva. I still don't know why the rematch is happening. It makes zero sense to me other than the fact that the UFC desperately wants the belt on Diego Lopes. But here we are. Volkanovski's last fight was, in Miami against Diego Lopes for the vacant featherweight title. And now his first title defense is the same fighter he just beat. But we're going to predict that fight and the 13 others here on UFC 325. Back-to-back weeks with pay-per-views last week. Oh my goodness, yesterday Justin Gaethje beats Paddy Pimblett to become the lightweight champion. I was cheering for Gaethje. I'm glad he got it done. I don't know how well the Ilya fight's going to go for him, but that's neither here or there. UFC 325 this week, folks. And before we get into the predictions, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more UFC content here on the channel. On Thursday, we're going to have our best bets out for this card as well. And on the main channel, Greedo plays daily college basketball and NBA best bets. Okay, on to the first of our 14 fights on this UFC 325 card from Australia. And we're going to kick things off with the road to the UFC. There are 4 Road to UFC fights, which I guess are kind of just like Ultimate Fighter finale fights. Winners of these 4 fights will be earning UFC contracts. I don't think they're technically UFC fights. They're going to be considered Road to UFC fights, but they're on the card, so we will talk about them. First of which is going to come in the flyweight division. We've got flyweight, bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight for these fights and for these tournament championships and contracts. First fight, Namrasi Batbayar taking on Aaron Tao. Aaron Tao, I was familiar with him prior to Road to UFC, obviously because of his appearance on Dana White Contender Series as he fought Elijah Smith and lost to Elijah Smith. Fun fight. He brought it to Smith, but ultimately Smith won, and obviously Elijah Smith so far 2-0 in the UFC, coming off of that nasty slam knockout victory over Toshiomi Kazama in his last fight in the Apex. But anyways, we do get this matchup now between Tao and Batbayar for, obviously, the contract in the flyweight division. Tao now back in his much more natural weight class, as he did fight in the Contender Series against Elijah Smith. Again, a good fight. Tao brought it to him, but ultimately did lose so far on the road to the UFC, though. Tao back-to-back wins, winning his first fight by knockout against Rio Torito, and then beating Shai Yin in his last fight by unanimous decision. Tao did drop his last opponent winning. He won by TKO in his first fight on road to the UFC, but man, what I have seen out of Batbayar, who I believe is from Mongolia, yes, the Mongolian fighter in the Steppe Warrior, I've liked what I've seen out of this guy here in Batbayar, winning his first 2 fights on road to the UFC and only 2 fights on road to the UFC by finish. The first one a knockout win over Wataru Yamuchi. He stiffs that guy. Stiffs him in the second round and then beats Agulai in his last fight, winning by first round submission after dropping him earlier in the round. I honestly think Batbayar is a tough matchup for Aaron Tao because they both have quite a bit of power for 125. I'll say that, right? Like Aaron Tao is an exception. 225. He's a short dude, and we saw that in the Elijah Smith fight, right? Severely outmatched. Not in terms of skill, yes, 100%. Smith was the more skillful fighter and the younger fighter, the better prospect. But Elijah Smith, 5'9", Aaron Tao is 5'4". And again, 125 is the much more natural weight class for the city kickboxing fighter on Aaron Tao. And he's fighting a shorter flyweight as well in this fight in Batbayar, who I think is listed at 5'5", kind of I listed at 5'6". From what I've seen about Batbayar, looks like he's kind of like 5'5", 5'4", but it's okay. Him and Aaron Tao should be relatively the same height in this fight. I just think Batbayar does a lot better than Aaron Tao. I think a lot of what Batbayar, again, does is just better than what Aaron Tao does. I think Batbayar, again, I will say this, Tao's got a lot of power. Batbayar's got power too. We saw that in the 2 fights he's already had on road to the UFC. Both those fights being finishes. I'm watching Aaron Tao fight. Again, he's entertaining, but he eats a lot of strikes at the same time. We saw that Elijah Smith fight. Tao turned up in the 3rd round and got things going and made it a firefight, but he's getting tagged in that fight early, and he's getting tagged throughout that fight. And you look at his last fight on road to the UFC where he wins it by decision, Tao is getting touched. He's getting touched up, and he wins ultimately. He wins, due to the damage he does. But, I mean, that last round was not great for Aaron Tao from what I've seen on that road to the UFC card against the Black Panther Yin Shai. I'm going to go with the Mongolian here. I'm going to go Namrasi Batbayar to win the fight. And I do like the ground game, too, if he does need it. He did fight Nimajar Dembarel, I butcher his first name, but the other Mongolian fighter in the UFC who fights at flyweight, he beat Terrence Saturn in his last fight. He's going to fight Cody Durden later in the year. That is Batbayar's only loss. It was in a local Mongolian promotion. Ended up fighting a guy who ended up obviously being in the UFC from Mongolia in Dembarel, losing the fight by second round submission. Again, the all-around body work in the regional scene for Batbayar has not been great in terms of the strength of schedule and the guys he's fought, but ultimately it doesn't matter. You're at this spot here against Tao, who I just think still is, I don't think he's going to be undersized in this fight, but if he does get in the UFC, ultimately, yes, he's going to be undersized in a lot of fights that he has, and I just think he lacks quickness in this fight, and honestly, skillfully too. I do believe the Mongolian is just slightly better. So I'm going to be going with Namrasai, Batbayar to win our first fight on the card to earn the UFC contract. I do think we could potentially see knockdowns from both fighters in this one, but I do believe Tao gets hit too much. I think Batbayar will eventually land that bomb. I'm going to go with the Mongolian fighting out of Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia to knock out Aaron Tao. I'm going to go with second round knockout victory for the Mongolian. Tao, 32. Again, that's not a horrible age to be at, obviously, but Batbayar definitely the better prospect at just 25. Give me the Mongolian to kick off the card by second round TKO. And now, obviously, too, I'll say this. Last week, we didn't know at the time when I made the predictions video about the finish bonus that guys are getting. And obviously, right, the undercard was filled with finishes. The main card last week, no, except for the Waldo fight. But that's neither here or there. That is going to be a factor for a lot of these undercard fighters who, let's just say, don't earn the most money. I don't know if the road to the UFC guys, though, are eligible to get the $25,000 bonus per finish. But I think that is a very, meaningful thing to keep track of as we keep going here in 2026 and beyond. So anyways, give me Batbayar to win the UFC contract by second round TKO. On to our second road to the UFC fight, and we now move to the bantamweight division. Again, we're just going to keep, leveling up weight classes until we get to 55, and then we'll be on to the actual UFC fights on this card. I'm going to butcher his name so many times. Sulangranbo. I'm butchering it. Sulangranbo. I think that's Sulangranbo, the Chinese fighter. He's 20 years old, uber prospect, taking on Lawrence Lee in our second road to the UFC fight. Okay. I don't have odds for these fights yet. I don't know if I'm sure there are going to be odds closer to fight night. I'm recording this right after UFC 324. At least on Tapology, 71% of voters are going with the New Zealand fighter in Lawrence Lee to win, obviously at home of sorts in Australia, and that is something to keep track of as this card goes on, by the way. How do the Oceanic fighters fare on this card? Well, we have 0-1 to start with Aaron Tao, but anyways, Sulangranbo takes on Lawrence Lee in the first fight. Sulangranbo from China, Lawrence Lee from New Zealand. I don't understand why Lawrence Lee is such a heavy favorite, at least on Tapology, over the Chinese fighter, because I'm going to be going with the 20-year-old here in Sulangranbo to win. I know he is, I don't want to say he's inexperienced, because actually in terms of, actual fighting experience, he has more fights than his New Zealand counterpart. He's had 13 pro fights. Again, very young fighter, 20 years of age. He has looked really good so far on the road to the UFC, and I'm just comparing his fights to the New Zealanders fights here, who's from Hong Kong but now trains in New Zealand, in Lawrence Lee, and I'm really liking what we get out of the Chinese fighter here in Sulangranbo. I am. Looking at what he's done so far, the power he possesses at 35. I mean, won his first fight by knockout against Peter Danzo, face plants the guy in the first round, wins it, and then knocks down Sim Kai Zhang in his last fight, winning the fight ultimately by unanimous decision. But it's a fight where Sulangranbo wins every single round, gets a knockdown early to establish, I guess, the pace of that fight and establish where that fight's going, and ultimately just, I don't want to say, coast to victory, but ultimately gets the win over Cobra Sim Kai Zhang by unanimous decision. And again, a pure striking fight where Sulangranbo is stuffing takedowns from a primary wrestler as his opponent goes 0-for-9 on takedown attempts in that fight. I don't anticipate much wrestling in this fight. Maybe. Honestly, we'll see. So Lawrence Lee's first fight in road to the UFC, he beats Zhang Qi. Qi, I believe is his last name. Lawrence Lee wins the fight. On the feet, competitive. Lawrence Lee's winning. He gets dropped in the second round, but ultimately fights fairly well, wins 2 out of the 3 rounds, wins the first and the third rounds. There's 3 total knockdowns in the fight. Lawrence Lee has 2 and his opponent has 1. Lawrence Lee lands a knockdown in the first and third rounds, and his opponent lands 1 in the second round. So ultimately, well, if you get a knockdown in the round, you're likely going to win, and that's what happened. But Lawrence Lee, very heavy on top control in that fight, looked for many takedowns against Zhang Qi, and went 6 for 12 on them in that fight. Again, landed 6 in total. His second fight, though, on road to the UFC against Ni Neem Van E. He goes 0-for-5 on takedowns. Ultimately, it's a TKO victory for Lawrence Lee, where, again, he finds that shot in the second round, but is still very aggressive in takedowns. Can't get them as that fight goes on. Eventually does land that shot, but again, tries to go to the wrestling, can't get it. Sulangranbo, we've seen so far, again, really good takedown defense, and the striking is there. He hits like a truck for a 135-pounder, and a guy who's so young, and we saw, I think it was John Gooden, if I'm not mistaken, on commentary for that fight against Peter Danso, where Sulangranbo wins, and Gooden immediately says, we have a very talented young prospect on the horizon right now in Sulangranbo. And I understand the UFC and their commentators, they do say that about almost everybody at times, I understand. But I do think it's very high praise for a guy who's only 20 years old, and the way he fights, again, you would not think he's just 20. He looks like he's comfortable in there. He looks experienced. He's taken on a guy who is going to have 6 or 5.5 inches of reach on him in Lawrence Lee, but I expect Sulangranbo to close distance. I think he should be able to stuff takedowns against the CKB fighter, and I am picking against City Kickboxing in back-to-back fights to start the night, and I'm picking against that New Zealand region and obviously Oceanic region to start the card. I'm going to go with the Chinese fighter here in Sulangranbo to win the fight. I think ultimately he's going to win a very entertaining decision. This has, potential fight of the night written all over it. Legitimately, these guys go, they're quick, they go for finishes, and I'm going to go with the Chinese fighter in Sulangranbo to beat Lawrence Lee for our second Road to the UFC fight. He is an underdog as of now on Topology. I don't know where the odds are going to open. I don't know where they're going to be at. Again, best bets video on Thursday. Maybe we'll take a look at some of these Road to the UFC fights. But I'm going to go with the Chinese fighter in Sulangranbo to win the UFC contract. I believe he's going to beat Lawrence Lee by unanimous decision. On to our third fight of the night as we move again now up another weight class from 135 to featherweight at 145 pounds, as we have Kyoichiro Nakamura taking on Sebastian Szalay. I'm going to go with Sebastian Szalay to win the fight. I think Szalay gets this done. Very experienced fighter from Australia, and finally now we get a chance to take an Australian fighter, sending them now, obviously the way we see it, to 1-2 on the card. Szalay just looks like the all-around better guy from what I have seen. This is a fighter who's been able to go 5 rounds. He was the former champion in Eternal MMA before fighting on the road to the UFC, and I understand this fight is not going to be 5 rounds, obviously, for the road to the UFC contract slash tournament championship. It's only 3, obviously, but this is a fighter who's well accustomed to big-time fights. He's fought in multiple main events for Eternal. He's won those main events, and he's won championships in Eternal. Taken on Kyoichiro Nakamura, who has experience, I will say, but again, I don't love the strength of schedule compared to what Szallay's been through. Nakamura, so far, again, obviously you have to win 2 fights on road to the UFC to get to this point, and Nakamura has done so, winning his first fight by a second-round knockout against Yizha Park. Again, with a, it was a knee knockout finish for Nakamura. Second fight, a dominant decision victory over Kai Wen. Stuffs a bunch of takedowns out of Kai Wen in that fight. Kai Wen wins the first, and then Nakamura really starts to press forward on him as that fight went on. We saw Kai Wen get 3 takedowns in that first round, but just tire out essentially. And again, Nakamura just took over, especially in that second round. Regardless, though, look at what Nakamura has done compared to what the Australian and Sebastian Szalay has done. I don't know if it's that close, man. Szalay is very good. Last fight, 47-second knockout over Chang Min Yoon, winning that fight right away, obviously. This is a guy who is very experienced with all those Eternal fights. I believe defended the title either once or twice in that promotion, obviously, in Australia, winning the belt against Dimps Giles by unanimous decision, obviously going 5 rounds, and then defending the championship against Tassar Malone by split decision, 2 for 2 so far on the road to the UFC. And his first fight in road to the UFC was against a guy, and Brundage Gisli, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Again, former Road to the UFC fighter as well, though, as he fought a guy who ended up fighting Su Young Yu in the first Road to the UFC, second Road to the UFC final fight, or finals. Again, Su Young Yu, this gets confusing because there's so many different Road to the UFCs now, but Brundage Gisli fought Sebastian Szalay in the first Road to the UFC card of this one, obviously, this I think third installment of Road to the UFC. Anyways, Szalay wins a fight by unanimous decision over a guy who had already been to the Road to the UFC finals prior to their bout in 2025's Road to the UFC. Again, Gisli, who went on to win back-to-back fights, ended up losing to Su Young Yu in 2024 for a Road to the UFC contract. Yu has a matchup against the aforementioned Elijah Smith coming up, I believe in the Apex in March. Anyways, though, Szalay, again, the road has been difficult, winning that first fight by unanimous decision, and he pitched a shutout for the most part. Stuffed all the takedowns. Was it the most entertaining fight? No, but again, Szalay is so experienced, and he's won so many fights. He takes care of business, and ultimately wins every single round in that fight. Again, all the experience in Eternal does eventually add up. He's got some big wins over guys who at the time, perfect records. He had beaten an 8-0 guy in Dan Jones coming up in Eternal. At 6-0, Gabriel Schulp en route to obviously winning the Eternal Championship. And I do like all around what he has in this fight over Nakamura. Nakamura may be the more explosive fighter. I'll give you that. Nakamura might be more explosive and probably has more power than Szalay. But other than that, Szalay is just the more well-rounded fighter in terms of defensive wrestling and, again, grappling in general. I like Szalay. Nakamura, again, will have a puncher's chance in this fight. We are obviously now up to 145 as we've gone from flyweight to bantamweight to featherweight to kick off the card. And Nakamura might have that explosiveness, but I think Szalay is able to weather that storm, and he's been in fights where he's fought big power punchers before, and he's been able to take them the distance and win. I think that's what we're going to get here. I know he's coming off a knockout win in his last fight. That's not something I would, expect. He put together a nice combo against Chang Min Yoon to win that fight in under a minute, but ultimately that was Salay's second knockout ever in his career. Again, this is a fighter who had fought only in Eternal MMA prior to Road to the UFC, went 7-1 in Eternal before, again, these two fights for Road to UFC. And I like him to beat Nakamura here, as long as he doesn't get caught with the big shot. But obviously, again, Szalay has been fairly perfect so far in his professional mixed martial arts career, only losing his second ever fight back in 2021, again, back in Eternal. So I like Szalay to get it done. I think, again, he avoids those big power shots and the explosiveness out of Nakamura. He's way more experienced, and he is more well-rounded as well. So I got to go with the Australian fighter here, fighting out of Perth, Western Australia, and Sebastian Szalay to win. I think this is just a gritty victory. He is going to turn 32, so more experienced guy and an older fighter, but I believe Szalay is going to get it done, winning the contract by unanimous decision, sending now the Oceanic fighters to 1-2 on this card. Give me Szalay to beat Hokkaido, Japan's own, and Kiichiro Nakamura. On to our final Road to the UFC fight, and I will say, I believe this is the toughest one to call. From what I've seen out of both guys, this is the one that I do have the most problems with in terms of just picking a winner. We're talking about Street Buddha, Dom Mar Fan, training out of Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, at a Team Compton, taking on Frogman Sang Uk Kim from Seoul, South Korea. Obviously, we're now in the lightweight division. Both these guys are solid, and again, I do believe they are very close. We don't have odds to go off of for now, obviously, in terms of where the public may be on in this fight, but at least on Tapology currently, Marfan is a favorite. 77% of voters are going with the Australian in Dom Marfan, while again, 23% of voters are going with the South Korean in Frogman Sang Uk Kim. It's close again. Dom Marfan, 8-2 professionally, coming off obviously winning back-to-back fights in Road to the UFC. Looks good in his fights. Again, no finishes in there, but beats Yuji Ifugiga, I believe that's his name, winning by unanimous decision in his first fight in Road to the UFC. Just a dominant performance. Goes to takedowns early in that fight and just controls his opponent and finds a way to win the first 2 rounds. Again, it's not pretty, but he gets it done, and he dominates for the most part early. Second fight in Road to the UFC, more of the same, fights Jae Hyun Park and dominates on the ground. Gets takedowns in the first 2 rounds, ends up having control in that entire 3rd round, wins every single minute of the fight. Again, he might not be the most entertaining fighter, as when he fought back in Eternal, I believe lost an Eternal Championship fight, yes, to Killian Salkilld at one point in time. Obviously, Salkilld later on in this card is he was supposed to fight Rong Ju, but now fighting Jamie Mullarkey. We'll get to that. That's going to open up the main card. But anyways, that's, the last loss that Dom Marfan has is to Killian Salkilld back in 2024, which was a rematch of their initial fight in 2022. So, and again, that's another fight that Marfan lost. So he's lost 2 fights ever, and they're both to Killian Salkilld, who is on the main card and is a very highly touted, undefeated prospect, obviously, in the UFC. How did Salkilld beat him? Well, Salkilld out-grappled him, submitting Fan twice by rear naked choke. Once in the 3rd round, obviously that was the non-title fight, and then the second time around for the Eternal belt in the 2nd round. But other than that, Dom Marfan has been really great against anybody else he's fought. He's been dominant on the ground. Again, this is a primary grappler who's got good wrestling and will look to take your back. Submission of choice will be a rear naked, from what I've seen. And again, just a very dominant grappler who may not be the most entertaining. It's not the most fan-friendly style, but he goes out there and wins fights. He's taken on the South Korean here in Sang Uk Kim. Kim coming off obviously back-to-back wins on road to the UFC. They're much more dominant, I'll say, or much more impressive, not dominant, because again, it might not be entertaining, but Dom Marfan's wins are dominant. They're not entertaining like Kim's are, but coming off a submission victory for Kim, submitting Ren Yahui by second round rear naked choke, and then prior to that, winning a fight by TKO over Adachi Kamiya. That was just eventually, from what I've seen, again, Kamiya kind of just got worn out as that fight went on. Kamiya dominated the wrestling in the first round, and then Kim eventually took over. Again, from what I've seen, Kamiya was very wrestle heavy. You're going to see that same approach, though, to Dom Marfan, and I think he's better than anybody else Kim has fought so far on road to the UFC. Again, it's not the best style of fight, but he's lost to one guy ever, and it's Killian Salkilld. And again, Salkilld, highly touted prospect in the UFC, who's 3-0, and, well, we'll see what happens in the Jamie Mullarkey fight, but he will be expected to win that one. Dom Marfan, the younger fighter, 25 years of age, about to be 26, taking on the 32-year-old frogman in Sang-Uk Kim. And from what I see out of this fight, obviously, it's going to be a I guess, clash of styles. Kim's going to have the striking advantage, even though, again, I wouldn't say he's just a primary striker, but in this particular fight, yes, that's where he's going to have to look. You're going to see the striking out of Sang-Uk Kim, and you're going to see the grappling and just overall wrestling out of Dom Marfan. Again, Fan came up on the regional scene in Eternal by getting subs, but so far in road to the UFC, it's not like the PFL point system where you can only advance if you get finishes. No, he just wants to win and get in and win in advance, and he's been doing that. He's just getting on top of guys, looking to advance positioning, and just establishing dominance. That's what he's going to do here. Again, it's not the most fan-friendly style of fight, but he wins, and I would expect more of the same here. Dana's not going to love having to give a contract to this guy, but I believe he's going to do so. I'm going to go Dom Marfan, Street Buddha, from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, picking up the UFC contract, closing out the road to the UFC portion of this card. That takes us again to the Oceanic fighters, Australia/New Zealand, obviously. We're going to take those fighters to 2-2 to close out, again, this portion of the video. But we're going to obviously continue to keep records for all of these fighters from that Australia-New Zealand region as we go on to our fifth fight of the night. Con Ofli takes on Yizha. Ofli training out of Melbourne, Australia, so he's obviously the Australian representative. As if I'm not mistaken, there is a fighter from either Australia or New Zealand in every single fight on this card. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case, because that's usually how things have to go out here. Except for Fiziev, right? I don't think, does Fiziev have any ties to Australia? I don't think he does. That's the one fight that I don't think has a single, yeah, that's the only one. Fiziev Ruffy has no association to Australia. It's just because Fiziev trains in Phuket, Thailand. Anyways, our fifth fight of the night comes now in the featherweight division as Con Ofli, the Turkish fighter now training in Australia, takes on Yizha. Ofli 1-2 in the UFC, losing his first two bouts, obviously coming off the Ultimate Fighter, loses the finale to Marion Santos, getting knocked out, comes back, fights Muhammad Naimov, loses by decision, but is coming off now his first UFC win in October, submitting Ricardo Ramos by first round standing rear naked choke. So a big victory for Ofli, finally getting the win column. Again, quick fight, only lasted 3 minutes. I think there were like 5 punches thrown in the entire fight, if that. And now Ofli is going to get Yizha, who is 26-5 as a pro, and coming off finally his first win in the promotion, beating Weston Wilson by first round knockout in 37 seconds. I don't really know how to treat Yizha and where to put Yizha in terms of just being a UFC fighter, because he's been a road to UFC warrior. This guy's had how many fights in road to the UFC? 5? He's had 5 road to the UFC fights, no, 6 road to the UFC fights, and he's 5-1. Yizha fought in the first road to the UFC back in 2022. Ended up fighting Ji Young Lee for the contract on that late night Apex card between Derek Lewis and Sergey Spivak in the main event. He loses a close split decision. They bring him back for the 2023 road to the UFC. He runs the table, wins all 3, gets his contract, fights Gabriel Santos in his first fight, loses by unanimous decision, gets dropped in the fight, really just gets dominated, and then runs into Weston Wilson in China. The biggest layup fight in UFC history, because Weston Wilson, again, was the worst fighter in UFC history. He beat Jekka, because Jekka sucked, but Wilson, loses to Yizha in the first round, last 37 seconds. By the way, if you care, Weston Wilson did take a fight outside of the UFC and got submitted by a 15-15 Nate Williams by rear naked choke, again, after getting cut from the promotion. So I don't know really how to approach this Yizha fight against Con Ofli, because he looked good against Weston Wilson. He knocked him out in the first round. But again, if you put Weston Wilson in there with Con Ofli, Genghis Khan Ofli is going to do the same exact thing. Any fighter on the roster at 145 pounds likely would have seen that same result against Weston Wilson. So it's really just hard to gauge where Yizha is at. Looks good and has looked good on road to the UFC, but again, where really is that talent level? He's won multiple fights by submission on the road to the UFC. I think half his wins over in that were by sub, 2 by armbar and 1 by rear naked choke. Can he do that against Ofli, though, is the thing. And again, I'm not really concerning myself much about the knockout with Yizha. I think it's there. Is he going to do it against Ofli? Maybe. Again, I'm looking at Yizha's last fight and saying, okay, well, anybody could do that to Weston Wilson. In terms of the Khan Ofli fight, most people on Tapology at least are picking Yizha to win the fight by KO. I don't really see it. I think he'll have success in the feet. I just don't know if this, power punching, style for Yizha is going to continue, because that's not really what he is. And that's not what he has been in the road to the UFC, and hell, coming into the UFC on WLF Wars. He has not been a big power puncher. It's just he ran into the right guy who was maybe the worst fighter in UFC history. Again, I know Ofli's already been knocked down in the UFC, but Marion Santos is pretty solid. Obviously, Santos, 4-0, close fight recently, or I guess 3 fights ago against Francis Marshall, but Marion Santos continues to win. So that's a good fighter. Muhammad Naimov fight he is Genghis Khan. Loses it by decision. Naimov goes in there, very wrestle heavy. Ofli can't get a takedown of his own. I assume he's going to try to take down Yizha here, and maybe that's why you see such a high number of people picking Yizha to win the fight by KO. I think he's going to win a decision. I'll say that. I think he's going to win a decision. I think Ofli is going to make this competitive with his wrestling and just with his, I think persistence in trying to get the fight down, because I just don't know how much success he has in the feet. I'm just not willing to buy into the point of, Yizha's going to knock him out just because he knocked out Weston Wilson. Again, you really need to realize who Weston Wilson is and what he was in the UFC. Everybody was, knocking that dude's head off. I think Yizha is going to get Khan Ofli. I just don't think by KO. I think we are going to see a pretty good striking game out of Yizha in this one. Grappling-wise, I think Yizha can hang with Khan Ofli, and I don't think it's just an automatic Ofli takes him down, it's over. No, I mean, Yizha is a very credentialed grappler as well, has some good submissions off of his back. I think that can be a competitive fight down there. I think the pathway of least resistance, obviously, for Yizha is going to be on the feet, considering what Genghis Khan Ofli does well. But again, we shall see. I think there's a lot of pathways for Yizha to win, and I am going to take him to get this one done. But I am going by decision. So I'm going to go with the Chinese fighter Yizha to beat Khan Ofli by unanimous decision, sending the Australian and New Zealanders now to 2 and 3. On to our next fight. Okay. Jonathan Micallef and Elliott. So I will be fully transparent with you here, and I did a bad job explaining this the first time this fight rolled around. And usually when I get rescheduled fights and nothing changes in between the fights and it's just straight rebooked because something happened for the initial booking, I usually just play back the initial prediction, because usually my thoughts on it just don't change. The last time Jonathan Micallef and Elliott were supposed to fight, I forget the card. Was it? It was not an Apex, right? It was yes, it was the last card in Australia, obviously. It was the Perth card between Carlos Ulberg and Dominic Reyes. Initially, I took Micallef to win. But as I did my best bet video, I then took Elliott, and I did a horrible job personally explaining why I changed my pick to Elliott. I don't know if I mentioned it all that much. That's again my fault. But I was very back and forth, and I eventually settled on and it was not a great betting card, in terms of like what we had going into it. So that's why I was like, it was tough, right? I did take There just wasn't much to bet on that card personally from what I saw. Anyways, we were stuck betting on Dominic Reyes. It was not great. Anyways, I had a lot of trouble going back and forth predicting who I thought was going to win the fight. I'll tell you this, I'm not going to put this fight in the best bet video this week. Because again, I am still very split on it. I became more confident with as I started to watch more stuff on the fight. And obviously, I am still going to pick Elliott here. But I will say, to start the week, last time this fight was going, I did take Micallef. The more I watched, though, I'm just like, as long as Oban's able to avoid that, shotgun body kick Micallef throws, I think he's going to win. Again, that's Micallef's best weapon, man. He folds Kevin Jousset on that multiple times. I mean, that southpaw body kick was just kept chewing Jousset up the entire fight. I don't know really now how to approach the Jousset-Micallef fight because, Jousset got cut from the UFC after fighting Micallef, was supposed to fight the Lazy King. Fight got canceled in the PFL, and then ended up fighting Patrick Habaroa, who I think is really good. But the way he lost to Habaroa, it was dominant. I mean, every time Habaroa hit Jousset, he was going backwards, and eventually Habaroa knocks him out 2 minutes into the fight in PFL. Which, again, Habaroa is really good, but kind of just puts into perspective where Jousset's at. He's a guy who the PFL is using to get their young talent over. And again, I'm not slighting Habaroa at all. I've been very high on Habaroa for a while. I'm just saying I don't know really now how to treat the Micallef victory because, well, we saw Habarova just run right through Jusei in his last fight in 2 minutes, and Micallef, although he won and the body kicks were nasty and he was winning on the feet, and he dropped him, sure, but it was just like, he couldn't get him out of there. And sure, Micallef looked good. He won, 2 rounds in that fight. You could argue he probably should have won 3, but it's, again, it's a one-sided competitive fight, if that makes sense, right? Like, Jusei's throwing back, Micallef is winning. The more I watch on both these guys, though, I think I have to side Oban. Because, again, what Micallef does well is not a problem for Oban Elliott. Like, again, if you're building the best fighter to beat Oban Elliott, and I'm not trying to treat Oban like he's Superman and saying, oh, like, you actually need to create, like, the fighter to beat Oban Elliott. He's not unstoppable, obviously. But if you're trying to, book a fighter to beat Oban Elliott, it's not Micallef. And I'm not saying the UFC's trying to get Oban beat. Obviously, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. But, like, his last fight against Xiang Ko was the type of fighter you need to beat Oban. A guy, a gritty type fighter who's got really good stamina, really good conditioning, who can get down and wrestle the entire fight and force Oban to scramble and force Oban to worry about takedowns all fight long. Micallef's not going to do that. Micallef is a striker who, again, has really good stuff on the feet, but so does Oban. I'm not telling you, again, Oban's a perfect fighter, but I think striking-wise, I do like Oban straight up against Micallef. I know Micallef, again, throws some nasty kicks, and the body kicks are perfect from him, but as long as Oban's pressing forward, it is going to make it tough on Micallef to get into his striking flow of sorts. And Oban, again, is a fighter who wants to bite down on the mouthpiece and just walk forward. And I think he will be able to do that against Micallef in this fight. He is an underdog, but again, like I saw the first time out when we got this fight, it was a tough one to pick. I sided with Oban eventually to the point where I felt good enough putting him in a best bet video. Obviously, fight got canceled, so we didn't have to concern ourselves around that. And I probably maybe should have thought better to put that in the best bets video in the first place. But I did get to a point where I was like, all right, I'm confident enough going with Oban. I'm going to take him here against Micallef. Again, the more I watch, Micallef's good. His kicks are great. I think Oban's going to deal fairly well with that. And now what we see out of Jusei after the Habarova fight and the way Habarova beat him, yeah, I got to go with Oban here. I'm not as impressed with Micallef now, honestly. So give me Oban Elliott to beat Jonathan Micallef. I'm going to take the Welsh gangster by unanimous decision, sending the Aussies and New Zealanders to 2-4 on this card to get us going. And now we move to the middleweight division, as we've got Jacob Malkoun taking on Torres Finney. Guys, I can break down the X's and O's. I know that's more of a football term, but, hear me out. I can break down the X's and O's for this fight as much as I want and much as you want me to. Who's going to be able to be the better wrestler? It's kind of it. I mean, there's really no other way to put this fight. It's kind of a mirror match, the way I see it, between Malkoun and Finney. Finney's never lost. Malkoun has seen varied success in the UFC, 4-3. Really should be 5-2. He was going to beat Cody Brundage, but then, kind of tapped him on the back of the head with an elbow. It was illegal, sure. I didn't think it was enough to, end the fight and hold Brundage out of fighting, but apparently it was, and Brundage won by DQ in pure Cody Brundage style, and we'll get to Cody Brundage in a couple minutes here. But Malkoun ultimately, right, 4-3 in the UFC, really should be 5-2. I think he was going to win the Brundage fight, albeit it was only, one round into the bout. But Malkoun was a minus 600 favorite. I think that was in the Apex. I believe it was in the Apex. Yeah, I don't know, right? I was getting ready to watch an Indiana football game. Like, I was walking to Memorial Stadium while I was watching that fight, and I was very confused watching without commentary. Anyways, Jacob Malkoun has seen varied success in the UFC, but it's been a weird career, I'll say, right? Because comes into the UFC as a short notice replacement fighter to take on Phil Hawes at UFC 254, Khabib versus Gaethje. And Hawes knocks him out in 18 seconds. Like, the first punch Hawes throws puts down Malkoun. You're thinking, okay, Malkoun's kind of just, he's Whitaker's guy. That's really all we knew of him. He was Whitaker's guy. UFC needed fighters, obviously. Whitaker wanted him on the card with them. He was his training partner, and he went out and got smashed and squashed by Phil Hawes. He comes back as a plus 300 dog in his next fight, taking on Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, and you're thinking, okay, likely the same thing's going to happen. He's just on a Whitaker undercard. Whitaker wants his guy in the UFC. UFC likes Whitaker, so they're going to give him another fight. No, he beats Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, and Malkoun then shows off his game and what he's so good at, and that's just wrestling and laying on top of guys. Does the same thing against AJ Dobson. Takes a short notice fight, if I'm not mistaken, against Brendan Allen. Loses it to Brendan Allen, obviously, because Brendan Allen, was fared fairly well in the wrestling game. Even though Malkoun did get 7 takedowns, Allen was winning on the feet, and for scoring based on damage, yes, Brendan Allen did do enough to win. Malkoun then comes back, out-wrestles Nick Maximov again, another mirror match, loses to Brundage in a fight that Malkoun was dominating in the first round, and then beats Andre Petroski, where Petroski knocked himself out. It was really weird. Petroski shoots for a takedown. The official, result of the fight says Jacob Malkoun wins after ground strikes after hard collision. It's such a weird finish. I believe in Atlantic City, New Jersey, Andre Petroski kind of shoots and dives in for a takedown and just bounces his chin off of Malkoun's hip and goes out. Kind of, and then Malkoun, starts landing punches and knocks out, or, TKOs Petroski on the ground. We haven't seen Malkoun since. That was in March of 2024. He hasn't fought since then. It was booked against Adolfo Vieira in 2025. That fight fell through due to a Malkoun injury. Now he's back 2 years later to take on Torres Finney. Malkoun's not old, he's 30, but he's taking on Torres Finney, a guy that does everything Malkoun wants to do. That's wrestle and lay on top of you. Again, Torres Finney was that fighter who had 3 fights on the Contender Series. Dana held him out twice, said no, he's not a UFC, caliber fighter. He's not on the level of a UFC fighter. Ended up getting his contract after beating Abdullah El Rami. Randomly, that was his 3rd fight, former PFL Mena fighter. Anyways, Finney gets into the UFC and fights Robert Valentin in one of the worst fights you're ever going to watch. Again, Finney does what Malkoun kind of does, except for he doesn't punch when he's on top. Again, Malkoun will flatten you out on top, not take your back, but just straight up flatten you out and then just hit you with, short, rapid punches. Finney just gets on top of you and lays on you. And that's what he did against Robert Valentin. He wins the fight by split decision without doing damage. But it's one of those fights where you can't score it for Valentin. I scored it for Finney. I know he did no damage, and I'm the biggest, advocate of damage-based scoring, but I couldn't give the fight to Valentin because he was just on his back the entire time. You give the 3rd round to Valentin because Finney didn't land a single strike, and he didn't land a strike in the first round either, but Valentin landed 4 strikes in the first round. I had to give rounds 1 and 2 to Torres Finney. It's one of the worst fights you ever are going to watch. If you need help going to sleep tonight, watch Torres Finney versus Robert Valentin. It'll help you. Now when I look at Finney versus Malkoun, I'm thinking, well, okay, who's the better wrestler? Who's stronger? I don't know. Finney's so short for the weight class. His arms are really long, obviously. Got a crazy, reach. Finney's 5'8". Malkoun is kind of small for the weight class. I don't think Malkoun's 5'9". If Malkoun's 5'9", Finney's got to be 5'7". This is what I'm going to look for, obviously, when we see these two facing off. I'm going to hesitantly take Finney. I think the value at plus 135 is actually really good. Guys, it's a mirror match, and Finney's just going to go on there and just kind of ground Malkoun if he can. We're going to know, again, who the better fighter is and who's going to win the fight pretty quickly. Whoever gets that first edge in terms of the wrestling is going to win, because it's not the type of fight where we're going to see a bunch of scrambles and one guy gets a takedown, then he gets reversed, then he gets flipped. No, whoever gets that first takedown is just going to have top positioning for the rest of the round. So I'm going to go Finney. I'm going to hesitantly go Finney here. I actually am. I think he wins it by decision. Yeah, I don't love it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to take Torres Finney to win by decision. I think the value's really good. I do think he's stronger than Jacob Malkoun, too. I think being lower to the ground and having a lower base and being shorter actually helps him here. So give me Torres Finney by decision, sending now the Australians and New Zealanders to 2-5 on the card. But can they change their fortune here as Cam Rowston takes on Cody Brundage? Probably. Cody Brundage, 11-7-1, still getting fights in the UFC. And speaking of weird careers, Jacob Malkoun is, very much so, like Brundage, a weird career in the UFC. Obviously, they have fought each other, and Brundage won via DQ. But again, just a really weird career Cody Brundage has had so far in the UFC. Multiple DQ wins, just randomly. Did lose his last fight, did Cody Brundage, losing it to Eric McConaughey, of all people, losing by split decision. But it's such a weird ride, right? I mean, this is a fighter who beat Jacob Malkoun due to, an illegal elbow to the back of the head. Got a no contest against Abdulrazak Al-Hassan in Colorado, where he was completely knocked out. But Abdulrazak Al-Hassan was stupid and punched him in the back of the head once he was already down and basically out, so they had to overturn it to a no contest. Then had a fight against Mansour Abdul Malik, where initially Abdul Malik won the fight, but A month later, they overturned it because, yes, technically Brundage was right. You don't score incomplete rounds per, again, what Georgia has in their athletic commission. So it got overturned to a draw. It's just, Brundage has such a weird career. He was on the main card of UFC 300, where obviously he lost to Bo Nickel, but took Bo Nickel into a second round, which was impressive at the time. Had a fight against Julian Marquez, where Marquez came back after 3 years on the couch, knocked him out in a co-main event in the Apex. Again, Brundage has had the weirdest UFC run of all time, and his last fight against Micallef was a very last-second short notice fight. It was put together like 5 days before the card started, or before the card obviously took place in the Apex, a fight that Brundage was actually supposed to win, and heavily expected to win. I think it was like a minus 300 favorite, and he lost by split decision. It's been such a weird UFC run for Brundage, and they throw him to the wolves so many times, but he just survives. Not because he wins, because, again, he just survives, and somehow he lucks his way into either draws, no contests, or wins. It's weird. Again, the Mansour Abdul-Malik fight, he was a plus 600 dog, and he found a way to get a draw in that fight. The Abdulrazak Al-Hassan fight, big underdog, found a way to get a no contest. Malkoun fight was a plus 500 underdog, wins because of a DQ. His run's just so weird. Started his UFC run off by winning 2 fights in a row, but then losing 3 in a row to Olasejek, Adolfo Vieira, and Cedricus Dumas, yet he's still here. Brundage has found a way to now make his 13th walk into the octagon this weekend. No, he's got more. Sorry, hold on. Math. 14th walk into the octagon on Saturday. But he's fighting Cam Rowston. And Cam Rowston's legit. Cam Rowston just knocked out Andre Petroski. And looked good in doing so as well. Came off a huge Contender Series victory over Brandon Holmes. Another guy, Brandon Holmes, who just hits really hard, and that was just the entire selling point of Brandon Holmes. He's going to hit like a truck. But obviously, Rowston found a way to knock him out. Got a fight on the Australia card. Asked for it as soon as he won his contract. Dana put him on the Australia card. He takes care of business. I was concerned about how he was going to deal with the wrestling out of Petroski. It didn't matter. Knocks him out right away. Will we see Brundage try to take Rowston down? I think he's going to have to, because I don't really think he stands a chance in the feed. I really think Rowston is that good striking-wise, especially against a guy of the level of Brundage. Brundage was very wrestle-heavy in his last fight where he lost, but I don't think he's going to have the most success wrestling tonight, or Saturday at least. I think Rowston's really going to connect on the chin, and I think Rowston knocks him out in the first round. But again, this is the dilemma, and this is the problem we always go through with Cody Brundage fights. He's supposed to be losing these fights, and he's a big underdog in all of these fights, as on Saturday, he's a plus 220 dog, yet he finds ways just to survive. And again, not win, at least through his own doing, but he just survives in ways. I think Rowston's got to get him here, though. Cam Rowston has better hands, he hits harder, and just as a whole, when you watch these guys strike, yes, Rowston is a much better striker than Cody Brundage, and it is honestly surprising that Brundage has made it in the UFC so long. The only thing I can tell you somewhat positively about Brundage is gas tank's really good. Trains at elevation. He's ready to go a full hard 15 minutes. But hell, he lost a split decision in his last fight in the Apex to Micallef. Cam Rowston should 100% win this fight, and he should win it by knockout to really get that home crowd going after what we think is going to be a rough start for the Australians and New Zealanders. So I'm going to go Cam Rowston to beat Cody Brundage by first round knockout. Should get that 25K bonus, or will get the 25K bonus of winning via KO. And I think he will take the now Australians and New Zealanders back to 3-5 on the card, moving their way back to a potential winning record, and maybe they can get even closer. But oh wait, Junior Tafa fights. How is this dude still in the UFC? I'm pretty sure Justin Tafa got cut, right? Like, that wasn't just a figment of my imagination, right? Tafa is no longer in the promotion, I think, right? Oh, he retired himself. Okay, because he was supposed to fight. They were going to give him another fight against Louis Sutherland. He didn't make the fight because he was sick or whatnot. He removed himself from the UFC. Probably for the better. That's obviously, we're talking about Junior's brother, Justin. And now Junior Tafa is back. He's fighting Billy Elekana. Okay, one takedown should do it. The Tafas don't know how to wrestle. They don't know how to grapple. Tuco Tokos submitted Junior Tafa. Billy Elekana has a ground game, has wrestling, has jiu-jitsu, knows how to grapple. This should be quick. I'm not going to try to hold you. I'm not going to make you wait for this prediction and make you guess. This is a featured prelim for some reason, so I know the UFC is going to be really cheering on Junior Tafa to try to get a first-round knockout for the fans. Nope, that 3-5 record, it's going back down to 3-6, okay? Elekana's winning by first round submission. As long as Elekana doesn't fall into the trap of giving the fans what they want. And he shouldn't do that. You're from Vegas. You're fighting in Australia. Who cares? With all due respect to the Australians. Again, I'm sure they're great people. Never been to Australia. But don't give the fans what they want. Go in here and take this guy down. And he should do it. Again, Elekana last fight won by submission against Kevin Christian. He got the knockdown in the first round and then proceeded to take the back and win by sub in the first. That was on the Garcia Onama undercard. Again, a first round submission. But again, that was through a knockdown. Just take the guy down here. I know Elekana has it. He took down Bogdan Guskov. It is the only takedown he has in his UFC career. But Junior Tafa doesn't know how to wrestle. Tuco Tokos dominates this guy on the ground. It was a fight that we thought was actually really winnable for Junior Tafa because it was, let's be honest, bad versus bad. I picked Junior Tafa to win. That's the last time that's going to happen. I mean, come on now. Junior Tafa, I thought, could knock out Tokos. Tokos had been awful in his UFC run. They threw Junior Tafa a bone in Nashville, and he gets embarrassed. Straight embarrassed. Tuco Tokos takes him down 5 times on 9 attempts, 4 minutes of control time in the first round, and eventually has control the entire second round until he gets that arm triangle, and there's no resistance from Tafa. These guys don't know how to grapple. Obviously, when I'm saying these guys, I mean the Tafas. Junior doesn't know how to grapple. He's a straight striker. I'm going to rely on my hands. I'm going to throw bombs. Sure. I can't call him an unathletic heavyweight, but he's like a semi-unathletic light heavyweight. It's not being entirely fair. Like, he is way more athletic than his brother. I will say that. And I always thought him fighting at 265 was pushing it, because I always thought he could get down to 205, and obviously that's now where he's at. But at 205, well, he's 0-1. He won his last heavyweight fight. He beat Sean Sheriff. Sean Sheriff, who ended up losing to Stephen Asplin in his second fight in the UFC. And Tafa was a big favorite fighting Sheriff. I don't know why he just didn't stay at 265. He wasn't a massive heavyweight, but that's the thing. Again, like, being at heavyweight at 240 pounds, you can beat a lot of these fat, unathletic guys like Sean Sheriff. So I don't know why Tafa went down to 205, and now he's got to fight actual skilled fighters. Because, guys, I say this all the time, too. Like, good fighters at 205 can be in the top 10 at 265. There's a very small elite class at heavyweight right now. It's Tom Aspinall, it's Cyril Gane, it's Alexander Volkov, and that's kind of it. Kind of. John Jones. That's it. There's no other elite fighters. Maybe Waldo's starting to get there. I don't think so. No, he's not. He lost to Popovich. That's it. Other than that, like, you can be the number 3 heavyweight in the world, number 4 heavyweight in the world, if you're at 205 and you know how to fight. Because a lot of these heavyweights just aren't skilled. I love Derek Lewis, huge Black Beast fan, but the hell was that yesterday from Derek Lewis? He looks like he might need to retire. I don't think he's going to. I hope Lewis goes back to his strategy of just fighting bumps and, tacking onto his record, which I hope the UFC is more than okay with him doing, and they should be. I mean, who doesn't want to watch Derek Lewis beat Sean Sheriff next weekend? Oh my goodness, they need to do Derek Lewis, Stephen Asplund. I just thought about that. That needs to be on the White House card. Stephen Asplund, Derek Lewis. Is Derek Lewis? No, Derek Lewis wouldn't lose that fight. That would be cinema. Oh, I need it so bad now. That's a fight I did not think I needed until I said that out loud. Stephen Asplund, Derek Lewis on the White House lawn. Oh yeah, 100%. With like U.S. government officials watching that. Oh my goodness, it'd be hilarious. I mean, there's got to be like some U.S. like government guy, like, I don't know. Marco Rubio won't be able to, he won't believe what he's seeing. I don't know why I singled out Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio doesn't strike me as a guy who's never seen a UFC fight before. I can't think of a senator. I know Rubio's in the cabinet. Regardless, I can't think of a U.S. government official who's never seen a UFC fight. But I'm saying there's going to be someone who's never watched a UFC fight, and watching Stephen Asplund, Derek Lewis, be hilarious. Anyways, I don't know why I got caught on that. Elekana will win by first round sub. Tafa can't grapple. Elekana's won by submission already in the UFC against Kevin Christian. He's shown the capability. Beat Ivo Aslan in his second fight in the promotion. Wasn't great. But as long as he gets a takedown, he will win, and he will absolutely be able to get a takedown. Yeah, send the Australians now to, 3-6 on the card, 3-5 on the card, 3-6 on the card. I'm losing track. 3-6, if I'm not mistaken. Give me Billy Elekana to win by first round submission. It's 3-6. On to our first main card fight, as we actually have 2 Australians going at it now, so the record's not going to move. As we've got Salkilld, who's supposed to take on the Chinese fighter in Rong Zhu. He now gets matched up against Jamie Mullarkey, obviously from New South Wales, Australia. So we got Perth versus New South Wales, or Western Australia versus New South Wales. Don't know my Australian geography that well. Okay, I'm not going to, again, this is another one of these fights where it's pretty easy. Yeah, Salkild's going to knock out Jamie Mullarkey in the first round. Guys, Salkilld is that next elite Australian product for the UFC. I'm going to start buying into the hype. And I've been kind of high on Salkilld, but after that last performance and the knockout win over Nasrat Haqparast, I'm officially in on Salkilld. Like, again, I always thought he was good. I've picked Salkilld in every single fight he's had dating back to the Contender Series. I'm 4-0 on Salkilld picks. Picked him to beat Gage Young, Unshelled Jubilee, Yanala Shmoz, and Nasrat Haqparast. But now I'm officially like, okay, yes, this dude's really good. I mean, nobody beats Haqparast like that. Guys, Dan Hooker fought Nasrat Haqparast to, a win, but it wasn't, it was a wrestling domination that Dan Hooker had over Nasrat Haqparast. Haqparast is known for having a pretty good chin on him, and Salkilld stiffed him. Stiffed him out cold. First time Haqparast been knocked out since 2020, where he lost to Drew Dober, right? Nobody does that to Nasrat Haqparast. Salkilld with a nasty head kick knocks him out in the first round in 2 minutes. And it was scary, too, because, they come back from commercial break, and Haqparast is still knocked out. And DC is trying to remain quiet, like with the mic. Obviously, they did not read off the official decision until Haqparast got up. But I mean, that's how much power Salkilld and how much force Salkilld is throwing with. Knocked out Unshelled Jubilee in the first round. Don't forget, Unshelled Jubilee said at one point in time, Khabib Nurmagomedov would have trouble with him. Captain India is here, Unshelled Jubilee, the fighting pride, again, of India. But Salkilld knocks him out. He beats up on Yanala Shmoz, shows the wrestling off in that fight too. How about 8 successful takedowns for Killian Salkilld, on albeit 23 attempts, but a victory. And now he's 3-0 in the UFC after that knockout and scary knockout win over Nasrat Haqparast. What did Jamie Mullarkey do to deserve this? I mean, seriously, why? I get it's a short notice fight. I get it. Mullarkey probably said, "Oh, I'll take it." Oh, Rong Ju's out. I want to fight at home. I want to fight in Australia on a main card of a pay-per-view. Huge opportunity for him, right? Odds aren't out yet for this fight. I expect Salkilld to close the round of -900 favorite. Legitimately. I think it's going to be like those same odds we saw as Atiba Gutierrez versus Pulev. I think it's going to be like that. Not in terms of how the fight goes. Like, obviously, Gutierrez won the fight convincingly, but not via the quick knockout. And if you watch the post-fight press conference, Dana wasn't too impressed by one of his new up-and-coming guys, obviously, in Atiba Gutierrez. So I don't know. Atiba Gutierrez is probably on the shit list now from Dana. Anyways, though, I think Salkilld runs right through Mullarkey. Guys, Mullarkey somehow is 6-6 in the UFC, but obviously the results recently haven't been all that there for him. He's lost 3 of his last 5 fights. Knocked out by Muhammad Naimov. He beats John McDessie, but here you go. Knocked out by Nasrat Haqparast, who Salkilld just knocked down. I know MMA math doesn't always work like that. Oh, just because Salkilld beat Haqparast and Haqparast beat Mullarkey, that means Salkilld beats Mullarkey. But that's more of like, okay, this is a levels thing. You can make that comp. What's the best comp I can make? I'll say this, right? Just because Sean O'Malley beat Piotr Jan doesn't mean that Sean O'Malley would beat Merab Dvalishvili in a third fight, right? Because those guys, and again, this is different though. I'm talking about those guys on an elite level though, right? That's why it makes sense to kind of talk about that, right? Or it doesn't make sense to talk about that because they're on an elite level and matchups will make fights at that elite level, the top of 135. Here's the difference though. Jamie Mullarkey and Killian Salkilld are not on the same level in their weight class. So we're talking about Haqparast as the bridge instead of, right, as my example at 135, as Merab, Jan, and O'Malley are all top 3 in their weight class, even though Song might have beat Sean, but whatever, who cares, right? Like, they're all on the same level, kind of, right? Salkilld, here's the thing. It's Salkilld, Haqparast, Mullarkey. The bridge is, Salkilld beat the guy who beat you, and you're at this level, and Salkild's way up here. It's tough, especially for Mullarkey on short notice, too, against a straight killer. So, Haqparast knocks out Mullarkey, and then Mauricio Ruffy knocks out Mullarkey. I'll give Mullarkey credit. Bounce back, beat Rolando Bedoya over in Perth. Competitive bout. Mullarkey goes for 17 takedowns, lands 3, wins the fight. Somehow wins the first 2 rounds. It's not that impressive. Mullarkey's going to stiff him out cold in the first 2 minutes. And there's a reason, by the way, it's on the main card. All that hype, straight to Killian Salkilld again. Strap a rocket to his back. He's going places. Killian Salkilld knocks out Jamie Mullarkey, and he does it in the very first round. On to the heavyweight division, talking about a hype train. At least the UFC tried to attach a rocket to the back of Taliesin Teixeira. Didn't go very far. It fizzled out right away. Taliesin Teixeira is back after a main event spot in Nashville, Tennessee against Derek Lewis. Taliesin Teixeira is back, and they give him another huge opportunity. So obviously the UFC brass likes Teixeira enough. There was rumors at one point in time that Waldo Cortez Acosta, if you remember that main event that got scrapped between Tatsuro Taira and, oh goodness, who was he supposed to be? Was it supposed to be Alex Perez, Tatsuro Taira? It was Tatsuro Taira and Hyung-Sung Park was the main event. I forget who Taira. It was Albazi. It was supposed to be Albazi versus Taira, and it got scrapped because Albazi got hurt. And Waldo Cortez Acosta wanted to be in the main event instead, and he wanted to fight Taliesin Teixeira. But Waldo kept saying that Teixeira was dodging him. So that was the last we heard of Teixeira. That was in, what, August? It would have been a really quick turnaround for Teixeira, in all fairness. August or September. Anyways, was it September? It was. That was still the summer. Anyways, Teixeira's last fight was in July, or was it June? June or July, where he lost to Derek Lewis. It was 6 months ago he lost to Derek Lewis. Okay, well, Derek Lewis looked horrible yesterday, unfortunately. But he didn't look that slow against Teixeira, and Teixeira just got caught right away by the Black Beast. Teixeira thinks he hurts him early. I don't know if that was Lewis just kind of goading him into something, and then obviously Lewis unloads and knocks him out. He gets Tai Tuivasa, who's just horrible at this point. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. Like, guys, Tuivasa's not that good anymore. It's the truth. Tai Tuivasa, I want Tuivasa to win. I do. But guys, Tai's like fat now. And he's always been fat. He's even fatter now. Guys, like I don't joke about it, but like it is the truth. Like I talk about unathletic fat heavyweights all the time. Is that not just Tai Tuivasa? But it gets worse. He's even fatter. He got up to like over 300 recently. He hasn't fought since August of 24. There were rumors, I think they were true, that he got up to over 300 and like way over 300 in 2025 when he didn't fight. What? And guys, okay, so Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Tai Tuivasa. Co-main event, or at least, no, it was a feature fight, UFC 305, Duplessis Adesanya in August of 2024. I don't understand how that was a split decision. Whoever scored that fight for Tai Tuivasa should never score a fight ever again, and I'll take it even a step further. Shouldn't even watch MMA ever again. That was one of the worst scorecards I've ever seen. I don't know how you can score a single round for Tai Tuivasa, let alone the entire fight. What the hell was that? But by the way, Jairzinho's been cut by the UFC. Jairzinho had a stinker against Sergey Pavlovich, who maybe it's just Pavlovich has boring fights now. Whatever. And now Jairzinho's, what is he doing? He's doing, what's he fighting in? Dirty boxing? I'll be honest, I don't watch dirty boxing. I'll watch Real American Freestyle, but the hell is dirty boxing? I know I think it's just straight boxing, I think, right? But anyways, right? They sent Jairzinho to dirty boxing. He should go to the PFL, but whatever. And Tai's still in the UFC. Tai's lost 5 in a row. In all fairness to him, his last 5 losses are Cyril Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, Alexander Volkov, Marcin Tybura, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And yes, Taliesin Teixeira is not on that same level yet. Probably never. Teixeira, everything about Teixeira screams like that he should be really good, right? He's 6'7", he's huge. He's like Hernan Ferreira, kind of. Legitimately, he doesn't fight like Hernan Ferreira, but like built like Hernan Ferreira to a sort. His head's actually nowhere near as big as Hernan Ferreira. His head's actually kind of small, but whatever. Like size-wise, though, I believe Hernan Ferreira is exactly 6'7". He might be 6'8". But anyways, right? Like Teixeira, everything says like, okay, this guy should be pretty good. This guy should be a prospect to watch. I can't treat him seriously, though. He beat Arthur Lopes, where, by the way, don't forget, this dude Arthur Lopes was tagging Teixeira so much. That's why we took Derek Lewis to beat Teixeira, and we were right. I mean, he fights in the Contender Series against this random dude Arthur Lopes from, I don't even know if he was an LFA. I don't think he was. He's just a random regional Brazilian guy. And he started tagging Teixeira. Teixeira eventually knocks him out, but man, it was not easy. Beats Justin Tafa, but the Tafas suck. And then, okay, Derek Lewis knocks him out. What has he done to deserve another top fight? Is he still ranked? Is this guy still ranked in the UFC? He shouldn't be, but I believe he is. I'm going to check real quick. He is. He's 15th. How? Tuivasa's 12th. He's going to be a top 12 fighter in the UFC. This guy's not good. Like, guys, if he fights Ante Dillia next, Dillia's going to stiff him in the first minute of the fight. Whatever. He's going to beat Tai Tuivasa because Tai Tuivasa's not good anymore. I'll tell you that, okay? Teixeira, he's going to kick his head off, legitimately. He doesn't really throw the greatest kicks. No, Tuivasa, again, he's obese now. He's morbidly obese. Sorry. Is that messed up? It's true. Teixeira, first round knockout. Give me just a 1-2, bam, put him down. Oh, Tai's chin, has been decent at times. It's not anymore. Knocked out by Gane, Pavlovich. Come on. Give me Teixeira. Tai Tuivasa, this fall, man. This fall from grace is absurd. Tai Tuivasa gets knocked out in the first round by Taliesin Teixeira, who again he's not even that good. But Tuivasa's just done, man. It sucks, but yeah. Teixeira wins. Next up, we move on now to the really good fights to close the night. In the lightweight division, we've got Rafael Fiziev taking on Mauricio Ruffy. Mauricio Ruffy leaves the Fighting Nerds. Obviously, John Silva picks up a huge win for the Fighting Nerds last week. Ruffy leaves the Fighting Nerds, now is on his own. Take on Rafael Fiziev in the feature bout here in the lightweight division is a really good fight. This is a great fight. Fiziev coming off of, well, a loss to Justin Gaethje and then a win over Ignacio Bahamondes when he desperately needed to get back in the win column, and now he gets Ruffy. Originally, Fiziev was supposed to take on Charles Oliveira in Brazil. They replaced Fiziev, obviously, after he got hurt with Mateusz Gamrot. Now Fiziev is taking on Ruffy. I don't want to call Ruffy overrated, but I am going to say he's a little overhyped. Ruffy, his run was great, but think about who he beat, though. Runs into Benoit Saint-Denis, co-main event, huge fight in France. I don't want to say Benoit fraud-checked him, but Benoit took care of him, right? I mean, Ruffy gets taken down and grounded right away, and the second round, same thing, gets subbed with the rear naked. That's not going to be a problem tonight, though, because Fiziev, well, it might be. Fiziev might take him down. Now that I'm thinking about it, Fiziev might take him down. I was thinking, straight striking fight. I think Fiziev can win it. And I still believe that. I think if this fight's on the field, I think Fiziev beats Ruffy. Yes, Ruffy throws some fun stuff. He throws a question mark kick. He's going to throw a spinning heel kick. He's going to throw a lot of stuff. Yes. I do think Fiziev's just a straight up better striker. Guys, Fiziev's been outstruck once ever. Justin Gaethje. Well, twice, but he's only been outstruck by one guy. Oh, he got knocked out by Magomed Mustafayev. That was back in 2019. I don't care. Okay? Again, this is a Tiger Muay Thai guy. He, is a coach at Tiger Muay Thai, striking coach at Tiger Muay Thai, who's only been outstruck ever by Justin Gaethje. And you go, Gaethje. Gaethje's the champion now, interim champion. I think Ilya is going to do nasty things to him, and it sucks because I love Gaethje so much. But, yeah, it's going to be brutal. White House main event. Ooh, and Ilya stiffs Gaethje in the main event. Oh, man. After Conor fights? Ooh. Anyways, I don't care if Fiziev's losing to Gaethje. He fights Ignacio Bahamondes in Azerbaijan and looks good. Again, mixes up the wrestling when he needs to. Again, close rounds that Fiziev is end up, like, again, all those rounds against Bahamondes were really tight. I thought Fiziev won every single round, and he ended up getting all those rounds from the judges' scorecards. But, again, every fight is, every round is very competitive, very close. But how does Fiziev make sure that he wins those rounds? Takedowns. Takedowns late in rounds, and he gets them. Fiziev shoots 4 takedowns against Ignacio Bahamondes in Azerbaijan, hits on every single one of them. Doesn't have the most control because he shoots usually late in rounds, but he gets them. I'm telling you, I think he's going to do that against Ruffy. Not just late in rounds. I think he's just going to straight up out-wrestle Ruffy. We saw what Benoit did to him. I know Ruffy stuffs some, but Fiziev's wrestling actually is not that bad. I'm not saying that's the best part of his game, obviously. Again, this is still a very good Muay Thai fighter. But if he needs to, I think it's there against Ruffy. And I'm not convinced Ruffy's going to beat Fiziev on the feet. I don't know if there's many guys who can beat Fiziev on the feet. And now we really need to look at Ruffy's run. It's like, okay, yes, very hyped up, got the fight against Benoit, lost, but has a big name, Fighting Nerds. They put him on a main card in Vegas against Bobby Green, knocked out Bobby Green, and all this hype. Let's think about this, though. Let's take a step back. Okay, Ruffy really hyped up because he was the 4th guy in the Fighting Nerds, right? Borja was winning, Prates was winning, Silva was, all the hype. He still is. Prates has a lot of hype, obviously, after the Edwards fight. And then there's Ruffy. Oh, there's a 4th one. All right, hold on. He's the 4th of the big 4 there, obviously. So he gets real hyped up off it, beats Bobby Green. They put him on the main card because he's a Fighting Nerds fighter. And then loses to Benoit. The James Longtop fight, he beats James Longtop, but the volume isn't there out of Ruffy. Like, not really. Like, I mean, there were moments in that fight where Longtop wins. Longtop wins the last round against Ruffy. Ruffy had already banked the first 2, but Longtop does get him in that 3rd round. Again, I think he's extremely beatable on the feet. I don't want to call him a fraud, but you go from Benoit to Fiziev? I just don't think he's deserving of this at all. I think Fiziev's going to beat his ass, personally. I think this is an easy 30-27 for Rafael Fiziev. Potentially a late knockout for Fiziev. But again, he's not like the biggest straight knockout guy. So I'm going to go Fiziev by decision. I really think Fiziev controls this fight wherever it goes. On the feet, on the ground, I believe Fiziev has Mauricio Ruffy beat. The only way Ruffy wins is if he's got a reach advantage, I'll say that. So Fiziev is going to have to, again, close distance. But the only way I see Ruffy winning this is if, well, the nickname's one shot. Yes, if he one-shots Fiziev and knocks him out. I don't believe it's going to happen, though. I'm going to go with the Azerbaijani from training out of Phuket, Thailand. I'm going to Rafael Fiziev to beat Mauricio Ruffy by unanimous decision. I think he's going to get it done. I don't know how Ruffy beats this guy other than a knockout. I think Fiziev is better every other place this fight goes. Give me the favorite and Rafael Fiziev to win. On to our next fight. Again, no Australian/New Zealander in this fight. Let's move on now to our next one. Co-main event. Obviously, Australia is back on the board here, or at least, sorry, New Zealand is back being represented here with Dan Hooker, CKB Zone, City Kickboxing Zone. Dan Hooker taking on Benoit Saint-Denis. Benoit continues to get massive fights for the UFC, and well, he won his last one and last two, so he's absolutely deserving of another big fight. Don't get me wrong, Benoit, again, has received opportunity after opportunity after opportunity from the promotion, but he has delivered recently, and I'm going to give him a lot of credit for doing so. Obviously, right, Benoit had that, big fight that he lost against Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos that made him really popular, obviously, because of all the damage he took, right? French Marine in Benoit Saint-Denis, ended up winning that fight against Matt Frivola at MSG, got the Poirier fight where Poirier beat him, huge dog, Dustin Poirier won, never forget that. Benoit then lost to Renato Moicano, who again is just a very skilled fighter. And then here comes the win streak. Kyle Prepolek was a short notice fight for Prepolek, but Benoit wins, beats Mauricio Ruffy by submission. And that win over Beneil Dariush, hey, Benoit stacks 2 victories in 3 months to close the year against Ruffy. And first big shot of the fight against Beneil Dariush, he puts Benny out and puts him out cold. So now Benoit Saint-Denis returns, and he gets Dan Hooker, who, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it, is the easiest fight in the top 5, or top 8. Is he still top 5? He's top 6. Easiest fight in the top 8 by far. I'm sorry. Look at the top of the weight class. Ilya, Gaethje, Arman, Charles, Holloway, Patty, Hooker, Gamrot, Benoit. Who's the easiest fight? It's automatically Dan Hooker. Yes, Dan Hooker is going to give you a war. You're going to outlast Benoit Saint-Denis? No. Hell no. Yes, Poirier knocked him out, but come on now. He's not outlast Dan Hooker. I know he's got a chin on him. Now he does. Randomly, he found a chin after being very chinny at one point of his career. He's not outlasting Benoit Saint-Denis. He's not doing it. On top of that, too, I don't know how much Benoit wants to play to the crowd. I don't know how much Benoit wants to, make this fight exciting. If he takes down Dan Hooker, he can submit him right away. That's kind of how I feel about this. I do think Benoit's got a really good ground game. We've seen it, obviously. He has submission victories over Ruffy, Prepolek. The other one's Ismael Bonfim I'm thinking of. He has very, good jiu-jitsu, and he's a talented grappler. If he wants to finish Dan Hooker right away, I think he can do it. I don't think Dan Hooker's ground game is very good. Sure, again, he had his phase where he was wrestling some. There was one fight against Nasrat Hakparas where he desperately needed a victory. We saw how Arman was really, it was easy for Arman once he got the fight down in the second round to get the submission. Again, it might take Benoit some time, so I maybe should retract my statement of saying it can happen right away, but it's there for Benoit. On top of that, on the feet too, I think Hooker's overrated. I think he is. Guys, who in Hooker's run makes him a top 7, top 6 guy? What, Gamrot? He didn't beat Gamrot. The scoring at 305 was really weird. That's why I was so glad that Dricus got a finish over Izzy, because I was scared they were going to screw Duplessis out of the win. I think on the scorecards he was actually losing to Adesanya, which was horrible. But the scorecards at 305 in Perth were horrible. That, again, at 305, not the last card they had in Perth, but again, the Adesanya Duplessis card. You had that one judge score the fight for Tai Tuivasa, and they gave the win to Dan Hooker over Mateusz Gamrot, which made no sense. Gamrot out-wrestled Hooker, and I thought outstruck Hooker. If we're judging, again, 10-point must system, Gamrot does enough to win the fight. But they gave it to Hooker. But again, that's the only reason Hooker's in the top 6, because he beat Gamrot, and he didn't even convincingly do so. Had a split win over Jalen Green. I thought he beat Jalen Turner. I thought he beat Jalen Turner. Beat Claudio Puelles, who was on his back the entire fight, trying to, get in my guard the entire fight. It's not a real fighter. And then runs into Arman, obviously loses. He was supposed to fight Gaethje. We all know how that fight was going to go. I mean, that was easy for me. Again, Gaethje ended up beating Fiziev, and obviously all worked out for Gaethje. He's now the interim champion. He's going to fight Ilya likely on the White House lawn, but at the time I was like, that's automatic. Gaethje's going to knock Hooker out. I think there's so many pathways for Benoit here. If he wants to try to knock Hooker out, I think he can do it. I think the pathway of least resistance, though, is on the ground, by far. Because if we do get Benoit trying to knock out Hooker, you do get in that firefight with Dan Hooker where he can catch you. I think Benoit can win that firefight, though, and I don't think Hooker is going to be able to outlast him personally. Hooker's been in so many wars. Yes, his chin just kind of, I don't know, like refreshed and just all of a sudden became good again overnight after, again, the knockout loss to Chandler and the knockout loss to Arnold Allen, where he did cut down to 45. But randomly after that fight, Hooker's chin has been fine, and it actually has stayed fine. Benoit, I think, can knock him out if need be, but the ground game is just such a clear advantage, in my opinion, for Benoit Saint-Denis, and I think he's going to get a second-round submission here. Once he realizes how easy it is to get that sub, or that takedown, I think he's going to look for it. And on top of that, too, right, Dan Hooker's 35, about to be 36. You're 36 years old, and you've had all these wars. You've had 38 fights professionally, and the way the Hangman fights, again, they're all crazy fights. Again, look at the fight against Dustin Poirier. Look at the fight. Chandler was a short fight, but look at the Chandler fight, the Paul Felder fight. All the Arnold Allen fights, the Arnold Allen fight where they just traded in the pocket back and forth, the Jalen Turner fight. His fights are fun, they're entertaining, but at some point, all that damage takes a toll. That's where Benoit gets him. I think Benoit probably actually drops Dan Hooker and then gets a submission. I'm going Benoit Saint-Denis, second round sub over the Hangman. Sending the Australians and New Zealanders just a horrible record. I lost count. Main event time, featherweight championship on the line. Alexander Volkanovski defends the belt against Diego Lopes. The rematch that's just not needed. There's no reason for it. We just saw the last fight. And there's one of two things the UFC is aiming to do here, but I think I know what it is now. Initially, when the fight was made, my thought process was, okay, this is either Volk's retirement fight, and they feel like this is the fight that Volk can go out with the win on. It's just another fight against Lopes. He just beat him. He could probably beat him again. Or two, they must really want Diego Lopes as champion. Volk has already said he's not retiring after this fight. Win, lose, or draw. He's not retiring. He's nowhere near done, apparently, which I kind of want Volk to go out, on top, but whatever. He wants to keep fighting. Okay. I mean, if he wins this fight, it's probably Evloev next. Very winnable fight. Maybe it's Leroy Murphy. I don't know. There's no one that really concerns me, though, for Volkanovski at the top of the weight class right now. So that's neither here or there. We'll talk about that at the end of the prediction. Anyways, Volk's basically saying he's not done yet, even if he loses. So obviously that whole, he's at home in Australia. If he wins, he's going to retire. That gets thrown out the window. So it's not the UFC's trying to do Volk a favor and get him a win on the way out, defending the belt. It's they want Diego Lopes to be world champion. I mean, sure, he's fun. He's an exciting fighter. He is marketable. He has a very fan-friendly fight style. He beat John Silva on Noche right before the Crawford-Canelo fight. And, if you're a combat sports fan, I'm not a boxing fan, I'll say, but, if you watch that fight between Silva and Lopes right before watching Crawford and Canelo, yeah, that just shows why MMA is the superior sport. But don't get me wrong. I mean, hey, Dana White's, fully invested on Zuffa Boxing right now. And they're doing those cards in the Apex and whatnot now. Every single week, there's a Zuffa Boxing card next Sunday in the Apex. You know what that means? Dana's not going to be in Australia this week because he's going to be at Zuffa Boxing, right? Whatever. Anyways, Diego Lopes beats John Silva. One hell of a fight. Phenomenal win for Diego Lopes. But does that warrant a title fight? No. The way it should have gone, and the way it should have done it, Evloev Lopes rematch, Yair versus Aljamain Sterling, Leroy Murphy, Alexander Volkanovski. That's the simplest way they could have done it. But Leron's not really a name. He beat Aaron Pico, took a fight against a guy who came in, Aaron Pico, UFC really promoted him, gave him his own press conference at one point in time, his own Q&A with the fans. They wanted Pico to win. They wanted him to get that title fight, and Leroy Murphy stiffed him out cold in Chicago, co-main event. Haven't heard from Pico since. Leron wants a title fight. We thought it was going to be him in December. Nope. They're going to give it to Lopes instead. Aljamain Sterling beats Brian Ortega, calls for a title shot. Volk says, I'll throw your name into the hat. Nope. Give it to Diego Lopes. Mosvar, I don't care. I know Mosvar beat Diego. I could not care less about watching Mosvar Evloev fight. I'll just be honest with you. Just one of those guys, yes, he's the number one contender. Does anyone actually care for Mosvar? No. Just be honest. Okay, Mosvar has not won a fight since the Aljamain Sterling fight, which he didn't even win in my opinion, and whatever. I just don't care about Mosvar Evloev. I don't give a damn. Anyways, though, I mean, he's fought twice since the Diego Lopes fight. That was Lopes' UFC debut back in 2023. The guy doesn't fight, does Evloev. Anyways, Diego Lopes, Alexander Volkanovski. So again, ultimately, to me, it's like, all right, the UFC just wants Diego to be champion. That's why they're doing it again. Guys, are we not forgetting that fight was really one-sided for Volkanovski? With the exception of the knockdown Lopes gets in the second round. He knocks down Volk at the dying seconds of the second. And you're thinking, oh, crap. Okay, but here's the chin again from Volk. Oh, no. Third round, Volk comes out and he's fine. It's just that one shot Lopes landed and knocked down Volk with in the second round. Around that, by the way, Volk was winning until the knockdown. That's it. That's really all the offense Lopes had. Volk was dominating, got out with the jab, landed the 1s and 2s the entire fight, and just threw Lopes off his game the entire night. It was dominant. Guys, Volk finished that fight, way ahead of Diego Lopes. Again, significant strikes doesn't tell the whole story, but I do think it's meaningful to a point. The significant strike count in that fight was 158 to 63 in favor of Volkanovski. Fifth round, Volk clearly outstrikes Lopes 2-1. He outstruck Lopes 2-1 in every single round other than the second round. It was the clearest 49-46 ever for Alexander Volkanovski. He recaptured the belt. One of the greatest stories you're going to see. Puts him back, or he's always been in the all-time conversation, but he legitimately is top 5 all-time. Volkanovski, in my opinion, comes back from getting knocked out in back-to-back fights to win the title. I mean, you can't, that's a movie-level script. And now he's got to fight this guy again? He's already won 4 rounds against him. It's not like this was one of the craziest and closest title fights we've ever seen. No, it was dominant. So what changes? Yeah, we're 8 months later? Volk is only getting older. He's 37. But I don't think much changes from the initial bout, personally. I don't think so. Volk is a year older now. He's 36 for the first Lopes fight. He's 37 now. I don't think much changes. I don't think much changes at all. I think Lopes' real only chance to win this fight is if he knocks Volk out. And that's what the UFC is hoping for. They want Lopes to walk into Australia and beat Alexander Volkanovski. It's the only reason this fight's being put together. It's just the only reason. And that's the thing with Lopes. Again, he's always going to have a puncher's chance. I remain adamant on this too. Lopes is fun. He's a great fighter. He's not a very high-level fighter, though. And that just kind of sums up 45 for you. He's not a very skilled fighter. He just throws a lot. He hits hard, and yeah, he lands. Skillfully, though, is he all that great? Not entirely. He beats John Silva. That's great. Looks good. Again, way more, it's a skilled performance, I'll say. But he's not on the level of the featherweight title lineage. And I mentioned this the first time around before their initial fight in Miami. I said, okay, all right, hold on. We have only all-time greats and Hall of Famers have been champions at 145. With all due respect to Lopes, it can't be him next. I mean, guys, the lineage of featherweight champions is Jose Aldo, Conor McGregor, Aldo again, but whatever. I'll just name all the guys. Aldo, McGregor, Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski, and Ilia Topuria are the 5 featherweight champions ever. Obviously, again, Volk's had 2 reigns, Aldo's had 2 reigns, whatever. But those are the only 5 guys who have ever touched the featherweight title. With all due respect to Diego Lopes, he's not in that class. And all it takes, though, is one shot that puts out Volk and wins the belt. I am still slightly concerned about Volkanovski's chin. Why wouldn't I be? Yes, he has not fought in 8 months, which actually, again, helps him so much. And that's why, again, I felt good about him beating Lopes the first time around because, okay, yeah, he's coming off the knockout to Ilia. Ilia, though, stiffs everybody. But he had 14 months off going into the fight. Now he's got 8 months off going into this one. Chin is completely fine from a fight that he dominated in with the exception of one shot that Lopes lands in the second round. So we're going to see full-strength Volk. And I do believe his chin is going to be fine in this fight. And I expect Volk to win. I expect Volk to dominate. Guys, this is one of these fights where, okay, one of 2 things is going to happen, okay? Either Diego Lopes, chins Volk and knocks him out. And in a fight where, by the way, again, Volk will be winning. Either that happens, or you just see how much better Volk is the second time around because he's already beat this guy. He already knows what it takes to beat Lopes. So, again, either Lopes wins by knockout, which I highly doubt happens, or Volk just establishes himself as way better than Lopes because he's already done it. I'm going Volk 50-45. Legitimately, I'm going Volk 50-45 straight masterclass. Lopes only has a knockout chance. He only has a puncher's chance, which again is fine, whatever. That's the only shot he has though. If he lands a big punch against Volkanovski. Other than that, I don't see it at all. I think this is one-way traffic for the champion. I completely think it is. I think Volk beats the crap out of Diego Lopes on the feet. Might wrestled him a little bit in the first fight. Shot 11 takedowns, only landed 1, which happened in the first round, or which, of course, landed in the first round. We're probably going to just see a lot of striking, and I think Volk wins. Volk's not losing at home. I don't think so. I know the UFC wants him to lose at home. Trust me, they do. They aired a lot of promo for Diego Lopes on that 324 card in Vegas. Again, they are hyping him up. They desperately want him to be champion, to tap back into the Mexican market. Obviously, another Brazilian champion, but they really want him for the Mexican market. They're going to Mexico next month. They want Diego Lopes to be in the front row with the title. They're probably going to give him his own custom belt like they gave to Alexa Grasso, right? Did they give Yair the custom belt too, or was it just Grasso? I don't know. I think Volk's beating him. I think Volk's going to win again. There's not, like, what changes? I've already seen the fight. Again, Lopez's win against John Silva is great. Knocks out John Silva, knocks him down, takes him down. Well, you're not taking down Volk. I've already seen you try to strike with Volk, and you lost. Yes, Volk is 8 months older. Sure. Lopez is obviously still well in his prime. He's only, 31, I think it is? Yeah, 31 years of age. That's okay. But if anything, Volk's chin is completely healed and refreshed by now. It's not like Lopez is just going to be able to chin him with one shot. I'm going Volkanovski. And again, I just don't think it's that competitive. I'm, again, as big of a Volk fan as you're going to find. If you look at my, all-time rankings, my GOAT list, Volk's very high up there. And again, I'm a huge Volkanovski guy. The problem that I have here, too, is, this doesn't build on Volk's legacy. It's just another win over Diego Lopez. What I'd much rather have is Volkanovski Sterling. Potentially the greatest bantamweight of all time. It's probably Merab, but Aljo's right there. One of the greatest bantamweights of all time versus the greatest featherweight of all time, with a chance for Aljamain to get 2 belts. That's what should be headlining this card. And it gives Volk a different stylistic challenge. He's got to deal with the wrestler. It'd be great. That's the fight I want to see. But no, they're doing Diego Lopez. Whatever, man. Give me Volkanovski by decision, 50-45. Again, Lopez could knock him out. It can happen. I'll say that. There's a possibility he just chins Volk, and I'm very disappointed. And it is what it is if it happens. Which, if it happens, you kind of have to give Volk the third fight. I will say that. But I believe Volkanovski's going to make this look easy. He just has to get through that early sprint Lopez always has in the first round. We've seen the early first round finishes out of him, obviously. The Pat Sabatini win, the Gavin Tucker victory, the Sodiq Yusuff fight. As long as Volk just avoids that real, first 3 minutes of sprinting that Lopez does, he should win. Volkanovski by unanimous decision, 50-45 in my opinion. If he drops around, it will be the first. But give me Volk 50-45 at home. Folks, thank y'all for watching our UFC 325 predictions, obviously main evented by Alexander the Great Volkanovski and Diego Lopez. If you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure you leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back later in the week on Thursday for our best bets for UFC 325, as well as next week we are back in the Apex for Mario Bautista and Vinicius Oliveira. We've got PFL coming up next week as well. So make sure to stay locked in to Greedo Plays MMA. Folks, thank y'all for watching. Hit that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba forever.